Hi there, thanks for stopping by. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to work a 6-point wrap or smooth button with 6 divisions. So basically a variation of the famous death's head. Stick around towards the end and I'll also show you how to wrap a hexagon-shaped button mold. So let's get started. Many of you who have visited my channel or followed me are familiar with the death's head button. If you're not, it is basically a smooth-faced button that is thread wrapped to create the design with 4 divisions or 4 sides. This button is actually a lot easier to create than it looks, and I will link below to my videos to show you how to make that. In today's video, we're going to expand upon this technique a little bit. We're going to take a look at the 6-point version, or smooth button with 6 divisions. And as you can see, that then divides it up a little bit like a star at the center. This is still a very straightforward button, and at the end of the video I will also show you how to do the same thing with slight differences on a hexagon-shaped mold. The first thing that we have to do is we have to consider the foundation. So all thread-wrapped buttons need a foundation underneath on which to hold the threads. For a 6-point, it is basically dividing your button into 6. So I've drawn them here so that I can illustrate it a little bit better. When I write patterns, such as in my thread-wrapped buttons book, I refer to each of these little pieces of pie as a side and a side by a letter. So if you make yourself up a master, this can help to learn the patterns. So A, B, C, D, E, F in a clockwise, going around clockwise. If you are left-handed, you will want to change that and go anti-clockwise. So you want to go A, B, C, D, and so on. And if you watch the Death's Head video for left-handed workers, you'll see why, because you're holding it in a different hand, but I'm not going to confuse that issue here. So those divisions and splitting off your foundation cross of 6 points. So from the center out 6. So I'm going to take a length of thread and I'm keeping it on the spool, and I'm using a number 8 cotton perle. Now if you are not very used to using working wrapped buttons, or you're using a very domed button mold, you may wish to just use a little bit of beeswax and rub it along the sides and the back of the button mold. You can do it on the front as well. This just gives a little bit of tackiness to the button mold and just helps to hold your threads. Okay, now I'm going to hold the end of the thread at the back, and then I'm going to wrap from bottom to top, and that's 1 wrap. Now I'm going to put 2 wraps either side for this particular example. So 1 to the left, 2 wraps to the left, 2 wraps to the right. Now that, in any of my instructions, will be 5 ends. So that's 5 long wraps. Now holding the button at the corner, at the edges, I'm going to rotate slightly anti-clockwise, and I'm going to repeat. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I've got a shallow cross there, and I'm going to rotate again. And there is our 6. Now, because I want to show you what's happening, I'm actually going to cut this and fasten the back and change the color so that I can illustrate to you a little bit more what's happening. And this will also let you know how one of the ways that you can add a new length of thread. So I'm just going to catch where I've changed direction at the back. It's not necessary. If you were carrying on with the same color, you wouldn't be worrying about that, but as I'm not, I'm just going to wrap underneath. For the second length of thread, again, I'm still leaving the thread on the spool or ball, and I've threaded the end onto a needle, and I'm just going to take it through the threads at the back, and I've wrapped it round, and that's nice and tight. You can also knot it there if you feel that you need to. I'm going to just trim off that end so it doesn't get in my way. Now it's time to begin wrapping. So I'm going to hold the button mold so that the cross is like an X and then there's a straight arm going across. I'm going to take the thread and I'm going to bring it to the inside of what would be section A. Okay? And I'm going to wrap from A to D. So I'm wrapping from the foundation cross, skipping a spoke. Then I'm going to rotate the button to the next spoke and the next section. So that would be B. Bottom to top, and so on, until I've gone all of the way around. And each spoke will have a wrap. And then I'm just going to continue to do that. Each additional wrap is going to be laid to the inside of the one previously. So I'm wrapping from the edge to the center, so in that direction. And just keep rotating and wrapping to fill the button. Try to keep your wraps taut but not too tight. And it's a good idea with most threads. You're laying them side by side, but you don't need to crush them, the threads onto each other. Just a nice side by side, and they'll kind of meld together if you do that. A little bit of space is often better than trying to push them too close. Now I can see I've just a little bit loose on the tension on that one. I'm going to take it apart. Now with this particular type of wrap and working singly, you're starting to get a profile which is quite pointed. Now you have two choices really here. You can carry on, but make sure that you pull your threads a little bit tighter as you keep working to fill it individually, or you can wrap broad sections right at the middle. It's entirely up to you. Sometimes your thread will dictate. I'm going to keep wrapping singly, but I just need to make sure that these central ones are pulled a little bit tighter to make sure that they stay in place. And you'll notice I'm using my nail to try to move any threads into position. Those, for instance, are a little bit too curved, so we need to straighten them out. And really, for an even button, you want to try to make sure that you have an even number on all sides. Now I'm going to trim the thread from the spool now. And remember, you can always use your third hand if you need to actually hold that taut so that it doesn't come undone. But you do need to hold it just with the death's head. You need to hold on to that because it will just unwrap. Okay, my tin is in the other room. Don't ask. So let's just grab that, and then at the back I'm just going to work a stitch around each of these points so that these do not slip. Otherwise you do run the risk of your thread slipping. Okay, so that's tightened those up at the back. And then I'm going to come up through the center hole. And I'm just going to secure down that last wrap, because otherwise it floats a little on the top and can be moved. A little knot. And then any threads that seem a little bit too close or a little out of sync can just be gently moved until everything's nice and in order. And so there is a 6-point wrap, and as you can see, it divides it up nicely and the thread catches the light really well, and then it's fastened at the back, and your side profile is just ever so slightly domed on a flat button. For this next variation, I'm going to actually work on a hexagon-shaped button mold. In many ways, this is far easier because you don't have to allow for the curvature of the circle of the disc. And you also do not need a foundation cross first. So what I'm going to do is start straight away with the end of the thread. Again, as before, go ahead and wax up the back if you want to. You will probably use wax less the more experience that you get, except on some button molds. If you're using like a shiny plastic button mold, it can be really helpful. Now, with a hexagon, to do the basic wrap, we're just going to hold the end at the back. I'm going to use a variegated thread so that you can see how interesting this becomes just using variegated thread. And I'm going to come up straight along the straight side and the straight side, fairly close to the point. Don't worry about trying to absolutely cover the point. It will just sort of become hidden anyway. Then I'm going to rotate and repeat. So those points and that flat edge is what's working as your foundation. And so you can just carry on wrapping, and you can wrap in pairs if you wish, or multiples as well. With variegateds, that can be really helpful. So let's work in pairs for this one. And there is the wrapped design. Now, because I worked in pairs, there's still a little bit of a profile, but not as much. We'll still go ahead and secure as before. So start at the back and secure the points so those last wraps don't slip. And you can still come up at the center. Ooh. So come up at the center, and when you've worked in pairs, you want to take care of where your cross stitch is so that you don't ruin the line. And I'm going to work a second stitch and actually make it a cross stitch as opposed to just a single stitch, just because I think it will look a little bit nicer because I've worked in pairs. You could actually go ahead and work a complete star if you wanted to. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Frog in my throat. Right. There we go, showing off all of the lovely colours of the variegated thread. Learning the 6-point wrap opens up other design possibilities, particularly if you want to get into stars. And of course, working it on a hexagon mold adds a little bit of extra difference and makes for a nice button. Thanks very much for watching. Do please click like, hit subscribe, click the bell icon to be notified when my next video goes up, and leave me a comment. This was another video that is by special request, so you never know, I might be able to help if you ask. So until the next time, take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.